This is the ERP Advisor.
Today's episode, ERP trends and predictions.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, ERP Trends and Predictions for 2022. Shawn Windle is our speaker for today. Shawn is the founder and managing principal of ERP Advisors Group based in Denver, Colorado. Shawn has over 20 years of experience in the enterprise software industry, helping hundreds of clients across many industries with selecting and implementing a wide variety of enterprise solutions. His podcast, the ERP Advisor, has dozens of episodes with thousands of downloads and is featured on prominent podcast platforms such as Apple and Spotify. On today's call, Shawn will offer his insights on the highs and lows of the ERP market since the beginning of 2021 and share leading indicators for what to expect in 2022. Welcome, Shawn.
Hey, thank you.
Hi there. Happy New Year.
Yeah, you too. And to everybody else who's hopefully staying as healthy as possible these days.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you for joining me today. As always, I appreciate it. I think if you're ready, we'll just dive right in.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
We got a lot to cover.
We have a lot to cover for sure. So how would you summarize the ERP market in 2021 and how is it different from 2020?
Good question. 2020 was definitely an unusual year, I think, for pretty much everybody, every business, right? Our clients or even our landlord, to the folks that maintain cars, to outdoor equipment that we've worked with clients, and all kinds of organizations were impacted kind of adversely in 2020, but a lot were able to get through and really sort of met the challenge. And I think if you think about 2020, like for our business specifically, we were actually pretty flat, which was a godsend, honestly. But we were helping clients get through their implementations that they were mid. So that's what we observed was there wasn't a ton of new ERP decisions made. I think some of the vendors actually did grow their customer base during that time. Oh my gosh, we got to get onto a cloud app right away. Okay, great. But that's a 6-month process, you know. So I do think there were deals that were stalled or slowed down in terms of companies going on to ERP in 2020 for sure. There was a lot of investment, though, in FP&A, financial planning and analysis software, also called corporate performance management or even enterprise performance management software solutions. A lot of folks had to do a lot of reforecasting. We had one client that had to reforecast every month, basically. They did 6 reforecasts starting in March of 2020 and then moving forward into the end of the year. It was crazy, right? Because the circumstances were changing. They're trying to predict really the unknowable. Right. But that was really good for that software category for sure. A lot of HR, I think systems, there are people made investments in HR systems, I think during that time as well. But again, sort of impacted by, hey, we've got to really get the work from home make sure people can work from home successfully and, keep people healthy and happy at the same time. So, a lot more sort of short-term investment for sure. And then, like I said, kind of keeping projects going. But then in 2021, what we saw was like a huge demand that had really been pent up. I believe part of that was PPP money. That was part of it. But there's also a lot of dollars out there in the market that are looking for really strategic investments to grow a business and nonprofits. And so we saw a lot of organizations, a lot of private, public, nonprofits, government agencies come in 2021 to say, okay, we got to get to the cloud now, right? We were able to get through work from home, but we really want to get an app in the cloud, or we want to get some process automation or some transformation. So 2021 was a big year, right? We had a lot of selections that we facilitated. We had over 50 projects in 2021 that we were working on, and we were busy. And I think when I talk to my competitors or other organizations that are similar, same thing, right? So 2021, I think made up a lot for 2020, but there is still sort of this, like, there's some undercurrents. We'll talk about those more as we go through here, especially as we look forward. But 2021, like I said, it was unusual, but I think fortunately and unfortunately, I think it's going to become the usual, meaning looking forward.
Right.
I think many organizations that we're talking to, I was at a 30-year manufacturer. They were on their old manufacturing app for decades and decades, just a couple of days ago here in town. And they're like, we got to get onto new software. Our current software can't do what we need. And I'm looking around and I'm like, wow, like this is a big change for this team. And they hired an advisor, not us, where they ran into some problems and they're working through it. Like we said, like, look, you got to go back to these guys and tell them, demand that they give you good service. But see, people are busy, very, very busy. On the advisory side, right? On the vendor side, software vendors who sell the software, the implementation partners are, there's this huge demand for people for sure right now, but it's also for technology solutions that are scalable, easy to implement, and can meet business processes. So that I don't like that. That's too, like, the pendulum swung way too far over in terms of demand is so high. But what is happening though, and I did see this in 2021, which was amazing, is that you see some vendors, we're going to talk about them later, it really stepped up to the plate and said, that's it. We're investing in technology, we're investing in our people, and we're going to bring great solutions to the market. So super excited about that. But that's sort of what I saw from between 20 and 2021.
Yeah, I think just from what we've seen over the past couple of years, 2020, people were needing to pivot and they were pivoting to do what they needed to do. But come 2021, they needed to like really make some decisions on how they were going to proceed with their business, right? Like they couldn't just pivot. They needed to, have software that they could easily access remotely, right? Be able to pull reports, what have you, the efficiency of it all. And so I think that's what I've seen from my side of it too, right?
Yeah, because, well, and Juliet, you're in an interesting position also. Not only do you get to host these calls, but you're also talking to our clients on the back end of the projects too. And they're telling you hopefully more successes than otherwise. And so you hear the real changes that people go through. And I think you're spot on. I think there was like oh my gosh, like, how do we run our business in this new, it's not a new economy or a new world or a new regime or a new whatever, no politics. It's not about that. It's a new way of doing business where all of a sudden everybody's basically like consultants. Like, I mean, I'm getting way into too much detail, but it's kind of fun. Our first office was when Juliet was working with Eric and I was, it wasn't a bedroom, but it was an office in a house, right? And we were able to work remote all the time. Now we have an office. We're going to get a bigger one later this year. I hope that's the right decision in this crazy wonky time. But now everybody has to deal with, there are people working from home and how do we stay remote? That's all handled. But the interesting thing is definitely the different mental pattern that people are having to operate their business from. And I think there's good parts to that for sure. I think there's not so good parts also. But I think at the end of the day, enterprise software was like, we're not just like one of my guys, Quentin, who's been involved in most of our selections, said, what he saw was, it was a big push to go to cloud before 2020 for sure. Then 2020 went, right? Like, it's like, now 2021 is like, okay, we're going to cloud. Like, it's almost like it's a non-negotiable.
That's right.
Because our models, our business models, our mindsets are changing. And I think a lot of people are talking about that. We've looked at, what other folks are saying out there. But I do see that software will continue to be a catalyst for a brand new way of running a business, which is good if it's done right. That's the key.
That's right. That's right. Businesses are reframing how they do business, right? Kind of because they want to, but they're kind of being forced as well, right?
Yeah. And if you're a software vendor or an implementation partner and you're not talking about how your app's going to support that, you're missing the boat. Right? Like, these are very strategic decisions. Ultimately what I'm trying to say is, I don't think there's going to be this, I hope there isn't, frankly, the kinds of conditions that all happen at the same time, economic, political, health. Like, when you look around the world, all of these things came in and there was a lot of uncertainty. And now we're getting through it still. Omicron's working its way through. I mean, we have a lot of clients, actually the folks we were just at, people are gone, right? The people who work on our car, like, oh yeah, we don't have anybody in the shop today because everybody's sick. Like, fortunately it doesn't seem as severe and okay, fine, we'll get through it. but it's just a whole new way of operating. And so from the software vendor implementation partner, like you've got to be talking about those things with your client, because your clients are coming to you. Our clients, our prospective clients are looking like, I don't know what to do. Like they're never going to say that, but that is kind of what's at the basis of all this is like, it's a whole new way of operating. And really enterprise software is like literally right there. It's such a great opportunity to help folks to build the business and continue to grow and operate and expand. We all want everybody to expand in a way that isn't so cost prohibitive, where you have to put in a ton of money up front. Cloud, we spread the money over time. So it's good. I think it's good.
Yes. Well, any other surprises that you saw in 2021 with enterprise software as it relates to vendors?
Yeah, I think, I guess I wasn't expecting this, and I probably should have, that there were major software vendors, right? There are companies that were evaluating putting clients on, they got hit with cybersecurity sort of ransomware issues. Now, Juliet, from talking to James McQuiggan over at KnowBe4, we love those guys, right? They sort of help with, the behavioral side of teaching people emails to click on and not click on, what is phishing, and, even setting up sort of samples where they send them out and see, and, oh, you clicked on this and, whatever. They don't shame people, but that side of it was really interesting to see the vendors, because we had a couple clients that also got hit with ransomware that frankly were all on-prem solutions. One of them did really, really well because they did have sort of the architecture built around their enterprise apps, and another one didn't. And there were others too. And I do just feel like with this move to the cloud, with this move to the sort of metaverse, we'll talk about that in a little bit too, that there are some risks that there's one vendor in particular that I think is really, really well poised. I swear to God, we don't take any money from anybody. We never will. But I will tell you that Oracle's strategy makes a lot of sense to me, because they own from the bare ground all the way to the top of the apps. And very few vendors have that full stack. And I think that's just going to be more and more and more important going into this year. I was just on a call with another vendor yesterday. I was actually just on one trying to do both here between our call and then another executive alignment call with another great vendor. And, the investments in data centers and in the cybersecurity, even at that level, I think that's what I was sort of surprised in 2021 to be like, oh my gosh, we put all our clients on blah and they just got hit by, ransomware. They can't get to their data. Like, what have I done? Like, I need to take more responsibility for that. So I should have been expecting that, but we're ready in 2022 to hammer the heck out of our vendors on, okay, it's not just a SOC 1, SOC 2 report and penetration testing and you fired this firm. Like, no, for real, what kind of bots are you putting in place? What kind of software do you have to fight off these things? So anyway, I'm really looking forward in 2022 to evangelizing. And I wish I had stock in a cybersecurity company because it's going to be really hot, but practical, real solutions are going to be more and more important, not just for clients, but our clients are depending on these vendors who are helping them run their business.
Right. Well, if you don't experience anxiety, go to our website and listen to the podcast with James McQuiggan, and you will have anxiety. And you'll go home and change all your passwords. And you will do everything you can to protect what you have. And, our home stuff is one thing, but like businesses and their data, like that's a whole nother arena, a whole nother level, without a doubt. Yep. Yes. So, well, speaking of specific vendors, can you tell us your thoughts on what to expect with prevalent ERP vendors in 2022?
Yeah. And before I do anything, I will definitely say to anybody listening to the call now, or if you're listening to this as a recording and we get something wrong, you have to tell us. And we've had a couple of vendors that have pushed back and said, hey, blah. We're like, oh my gosh, you're right. So, we have done a great job with building that feedback back into our process for sure. So, and the other condition I'll give here is I'm only going to say the good stuff just because that's who I am as a person. But there are differences between the apps, and it's very easy for me or for my team to see this. And, it's not like going out and buying a car. where you buy a mid-level sedan, or the light duty pickup truck, right? And there's 3 or 4 or 5, they all basically do the same thing, and maybe they feel a little different, you get into them or whatever. In the instance of pick any application, SAP, especially big SAP implementation, at one company versus SAP at another even is totally different. The way the software is configured, it's customized, it's bolted on with different apps. It's almost like a person. They're so different. So even though we may have one instance of blah and then another instance of the same app at another company, we're actually in the middle, we're just starting a project. 2 companies do the exact same thing. And the way they were looking at implementing one of the apps and the way they've implemented it's totally different. So all that being said, let's do it. So maybe what I can do
start. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Maybe we could start with Acumatica and then move on to Epicor and then go from there. What do you think?
Cool. Kind of go down the list. I love it.
Yeah.
And we'll do it in alphabetical order. So Acumatica, we just had a great call yesterday with their CRO. I can't say what was on the call because I'm under NDA. Man, it was a great call. Yeah, just great product roadmap. I really see them coming to kind of not fruition. They've been around for over a decade, but they're doing the right kinds of enhancements in the product that make me feel like, yeah, these guys are growing. I actually even just said that on a call yesterday. No, it was at lunch. It was at coffee this morning. Oh my gosh. Where I said, Acumatica is really coming up. Great price points. Implementation partners are good that are out there. And their roadmap is really evolving to be able to handle more complex companies. They're probably one of the newer kids on the block, which does usually mean the depth of their functionality isn't as rich as maybe somebody's been around forever. It does mean that. But I see them investing in the right areas and doing the right things. And I'm not going to share what isn't materially public information, right? I'm only going to share what I can share, and I'm going to share the good stuff. What I love about Acumatica is, they have a partner channel that's very clear. It's very obvious how you buy from Acumatica and who implements. But Acumatica pays partners based on customer satisfaction, not just based on the deal that they closed. So, and that's huge for me, right? Because I get a call, usually it's not during implementation. Our people are there, we're going to do fine. It's a year later, 2 years later. Oh, I don't like this. I'm like, oh God, what did we do wrong? Wait, what did they do wrong? Well, the Acumatica partners are incented to do a good job and continue to do a job for their customers. And I love that.
Yes, that's great. Oh my gosh. What about Epicor? If we move on to Epicor.
Yeah, we're, again, if you want the full opinion, you're going to have to call us. But I've been through a love-hate relationship with Epicor. I'm just going to say it. It's been more hate, love. And I'm in the love part for sure. I think there was a lot of struggles with some of their earlier releases. Now I'm kind of like a dinosaur and then like an elephant with my memory. But Epicor 9, there were some challenges. The app was great. Salespeople were great, but the implementations, we really struggled with that. Over 10 years ago. Okay. We're talking over a decade ago. And then I sort of lost track and sort of kept an eye on things. But then really this year went to the conference, really saw the investment that the executive team has done. They've had some changes on their executive team recently, but I think it's okay. Their Kinetic product, I really like it, especially for manufacturers, for ETO manufacturing. And we've selected it for client. We had to push it off here. They need to start a little bit later, but I'm really excited to see how that goes. I think there are some great partners too now, and that's huge. So I really think Epicor is getting their recurring revenue model, their cloud solution grooved in. And I think we're going to see a lot of growth for them for sure. Again, a great price point, and I think they're really good for certain industries for sure, manufacturing. And I do, I expect great things from them for sure. They've got a great leadership team, and even the middle level people, they're super experienced. So I'm really excited to see kind of what happens from Epicor. And as an independent, right? They're not a part of a bigger whatever. That's going to be interesting to see what they do there too. I think their private equity team likes them because of the returns they're getting on that. All good stuff.
Yes. You speak to IFS?
Yeah. So we spent a lot of time this year sort of re-engaging with IFS. And, for heavy asset intensive industries, they're the best, right? They're EAM. I think I just saw they got a great award for that from one of the analyst groups. They've got good partners also out there. We're in communication with one of their top partners, and they're growing and they're expanding. And I love seeing that. It's, the software and the implementation, we haven't been through one. So I don't know what it's really like, right? But I can tell you, if you're in a natural resources, energy, any kind of asset, sort of, again, heavy asset power. We had a client that was running PeopleSoft that actually got hit with cybersecurity or ransomware, but they were able to get through it. They got the FBI involved, and that helped.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. But they ended up staying on their PeopleSoft instance, but I was really looking at IFS for them because I like that solution. What I also like about IFS, whose little brother is Acumatica in a way, because they're both owned by the same parent. And I don't know, maybe it's like having a little brother who's getting taller, I guess, but EQT is a long-term player for enterprise software. And so I think it's a good solution, again, in those kinds of industries that you have to look at. Like, we have to look at that when we have those kinds of industries for clients.
Right. What about Infor?
We've done a lot with Infor this year. We've worked with their Cloud Suite industrial, Cloud Suite distribution products. We've gotten to know the team better over there. Good people for sure. When I say good people on the software side, that's really important. Like, really important, right? Because if you get people that aren't caring or they're not whatever, it just leads to just bad discussions. We had that happen with a vendor this year, and I was like, no, right? But the Infor folks, I think, are doing really good. I think they're investing in their sales channels. So, Infor, I think, is really liking the subscription license, or the subscription model over a license model. And they're really getting used to that. They've got a couple partners that are leading that in terms of deployments. They've got a couple partners that are still a little behind on that. Actually, we just had a client go live with one of the Infor products. We were just talking to him a few minutes ago, and he said, that's the one regret, is that the partner we had didn't quite get this cloud deployment, right? I'm like, oh, I know, but they're getting through it. They're working through it. Whereas other partners are like, what do you mean? There is no other way to implement. So that's fine. It's part of the maturation. Everybody's going through growth and expansion problems all the time. But their products are solid. The partners have a ton of industry experience. So again, this manufacturer that I was at, family-owned company, I was like, why don't you guys really spend some more time with Infor? Because it's a good, solid product for manufacturing for sure. But it doesn't have as verbose, let's say, of an ecosystem in terms of like lots of integration partners out there. You don't have a lot of products that are being written to just integrate with Infor, right? Infor has sort of been, I wouldn't say a closed ecosystem at all. There's of course, the Avaleras and all the normal companies, of course, do tons and tons of integrations. There's a great some CAD solutions that integrate between SolidWorks and AutoCAD and Infor for sure. Very just manufacturing product centric, which is great for that industry for sure. So, we're looking at them on every single one of our deals. And I will tell you this, several years ago, we weren't. So I think they've done a ton of investment. Chuck Phillips, I think, is the guy who came over from Oracle, led the team there at Infor, and I think that's paying off for him.
Are people more attracted to subscription-based as opposed to, what was the other one? Subscription-based?
A license, the upfront license.
Oh, license, right.
It's a good question. Some are and some aren't. But the reality is it's a bit like leasing a car, where your payments are spread out over time. You don't have a big upfront. But it's the benefit of having all the administration and the management of the app in the cloud. So you're paying extra for that, so to speak, even though it's incremental for the vendors. But yeah, I think overall, most people like that model. Yeah. Right.
Because it's not such a huge commitment up front, like you said, right?
Exactly. That's exactly right. Implementation cost is still pretty big up front, but you got it. But it's more over time, right? Yeah.
Is Infor the only one that has that, or are there others?
Oh, no. Even some of the other vendors, you can still do kind of a license, kind of an upfront normal perpetual license is what it's called. But most of the vendors are moving away from that model. Their investors, their ownership teams, they want the recurring revenue stream that goes on and on and on and on.
Right. That makes sense. That makes sense. What about Microsoft Dynamics? Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah. So, Microsoft, again, these conversations, we just are like in them all the time. So it's great to be able to share them. Microsoft's sort of moving away, great customer base between their 4 legacy products, Microsoft Dynamics 365, AX, NAV, GP, and SL, and then CRM is kind of different. But those are all sort of shifting over to what's called Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central and Microsoft Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations, or that one's also sometimes called Microsoft Dynamics 365 Finance and Supply Chain. I can say that very fast because I say it like 10 times a day because clients are like, I want to go to Dynamics. I'm like, which one? So I think that strategy is much more clear on when you would go to what product for sure. I think partners, like we talked about with Infor, I think the Microsoft partners are embracing the cloud solutions more, which is good. And, that certain industries distribution is good for Business Central. We've got some great partners there. They've had some great wins for some of our distribution clients. And then on finance and operations, it's an interesting product because it's a little more flexible, a little more malleable. It's more expensive to implement. But we had a hospitality company that just implemented it recently. And it was great because their entire IT people work with Microsoft technology.
Oh, right.
Now their ERP is Microsoft, and it's like, oh, it couples in. We're talking to a national services firm right now, and I know that their IT people are thinking like, we like Microsoft, and there's great partners too that really understand even not just verticals but micro verticals. So not just professional services but management consultants and all the business challenges that they have. So that's the key with F&O is you've got to find the right partner for sure, and there's some really good ones out there. And they're changing also. There's been a lot of shifting in those partners to where they're getting acquired and some of those other things, but there's a lot of great resources that are still available for those products.
Okay, well, can you speak to NetSuite / Oracle, like them each individually and then whatever overlap there might be?
Let's do it. So we can start with NetSuite. So NetSuite is sort of the, I don't know a good analogy. I don't know what people like with cars these days, but NetSuite's sort of like maybe I'm showing my, I don't know. I'm just going to say a Honda Accord. You can't go wrong with a Honda Accord. Now, I don't have a Honda Accord, but I did. Everybody, or a Toyota Camry maybe, or something like that, right? Where it's mid-size, good, it's stable, it's good, and it's very reliable, right? That's right. And it's just the one that our CFOs are like, well, why wouldn't I just do NetSuite, right? And we're like, I don't know, if it's just a NetSuite deal, let's go in and check it out and make sure, right? Or here's the name of a couple of people to call it NetSuite. You're exactly right. Go NetSuite, right? One of the lunches or coffees I was at recently, we have an international company. They're going to do manufacturing in Scotland. They're going to do construction projects throughout the world. And they're basically doing satellite stuff. So they're going to be kind of in that space. And, NetSuite's a good fit for that kind of. What about the aerospace and defense requirements when you get into ITAR and some of these things when you're working for the government? Oh, we've got that covered with DCA compliance. Well, it's a little bit different. So what I see happening with NetSuite, and I like this, is not just partners are developing solutions, micro vertical solutions, but I see NetSuite taking more responsibility for this big customer base that they have. And, if you're the second name or the first name on a short list, then that comes with more responsibility. Like, what can you really do to meet these needs? Because you are raking in the cash, right? NetSuite's growing like mad, which is awesome. We just congratulated them on their earnings, and I love that. We've got good friends and people that work over there. I've known them for 15 years, right? We're doing deals with NetLedger back in the day. But man, NetSuite, you get that much money, you better be putting it into your product, and you better be able to meet the needs of customers better than your competitors. And that's how you win. You don't just win by being sort of, gliding, it won't continue. There are so many other companies, Acumatica, right, that are on your heels that if you don't continue to innovate and your sales processes aren't super focused on what the real client needs are, you're going to lose. And we did see that, honestly. I've talked to our folks over at NetSuite about this. We've got some good mitigations in place now, but we did see that last year. And I think ultimately there are great people at that firm that have a passion for customer service and customer care. And I think they're going to see their way through it, but it's been a lot of growth. I mean, we went through a lot of growth this year and we struggled with it and trying to figure things out and everything. Everybody's doing that, but I'm just excited for what NetSuite can do. I really am. I think they've just got a lot of resources, including cash. They made an acquisition just this last week, which was exciting. To put CPQ with Verenia into the base product is amazing. All of my clients want CPQ, whether they know it or not. They all want that functionality, but we have to go buy it from another vendor. There's an implementation, there's an integration, then it's just complex. Whereas they're building that into their platform or buying it. I love that.
Interesting.
That's good.
Yeah.
And Oracle, let me talk about Oracle overall. Like I said earlier, nobody is positioned for the cloud better than Oracle. I just said it, right? Like I said, some of the analysts and other advisory people get paid by the vendors. Honestly, we don't get a dime. We never have, we never will. But I really like the way Oracle is positioned. I think Larry Ellison probably in his core team, his highest of highest level sees that. And I think I love that. I love that to death because I'm going to worry less about clients getting on Oracle and NetSuite because of Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, because of Oracle Cloud, the integration tools, because all the way down to they own the data centers, all that stuff. I love that about them. Now, the ERP Cloud Fusion, ERP Cloud Service, get those names a little confused. But the cloud product from Oracle, I see a lot more adoption of that too. And I think it's really becoming of age as well, that we're looking at it for all of our clients. Got a ton of EBS, got a ton of JD Edwards, got a ton of PeopleSoft customers, and the roadmaps are clear that they're going to be supported. They've done a really, really good job with that. And I mean that because I was at JD Edwards, in the dark ages.
Right.
I want to see that product, those customers be taken care of, right? And I think Oracle's doing that. But I think this next year, this is going to be the telltale year for them. Are customers going to migrate or not? Right? Are they going to just stay on these old systems until they positively have to change? Or is there incentive to change? And I think Oracle again has a lot of traction there, but I think 2022 is going to be a big year for that for them.
Well, regardless of how big you are or how small you are, you have to produce and be able to do a good job, right?
We all do. You just
line,
eventually,
right?
if you don't, man, especially in enterprise software, you'll get.
That's right. That's right. Okay, well, moving on, what about Sage? Can you speak to us about that a little bit?
Yeah, so Sage, there's sort of multiple products. Of course, it's Sage. There's Intact, right? There's X3. There's all the Sage 100, 300. There's the construction Sage 300C, I think it is. There's 500. I probably left off 3 or 4 or 5 other products for sure. There's some other point solutions for payroll, I think for CRM. I think probably says too much sometimes. At least that's what my wife tells me. Sometimes she does. Last year I was like, oh my gosh, Acumatica is going to get bought by Sage. I don't think that's going to happen because Sage just brought Bright Pearl in the last couple of weeks. And I think that's a big strategic investment for them because especially looking at Intact, if they can figure out how to bring those products together, sort of best of breed financials with sort of retail e-commerce, even some WMS kind of functionality, all of a sudden they're a great tier 2 sort of a distributor kind of a product, right? Whereas right now, Sage Intact's focus has been best of breed, right? Around financials and some inventory. Definitely good on the nonprofit side. That was one of the calls we got a couple of years ago was you need to look at where we're at in the nonprofit space. We look at Sage for every nonprofit. We just talked to a mission-driven company last night who's probably going to down select to Intact, which is good. So I think that product makes a lot of sense. I think there's some good headway. I think there's a lot of good motion going forward. I'm not sure about the rest of the products, right? I'm just not sure because we see, frankly, a lot of clients coming off of the Sage 100 old mass 9,200. And 500, I used to love 500 in the day for a manufacturing solution, but I think they moved to X3. And I think, I look at the partner channel and how much are partners investing in X3? And I'm just not sure. So it's a great product for certain industries still. But it is something that just merits a good conversation with your sage reps to say, look, I really want to understand the viability. Where are you going? What's the roadmap with this product for sure?
That's right. Well, you touched a little bit ago on SAP. Anything else you'd like to add about SAP?
Yeah, SAP, we participated in a couple of industry groups, and it was interesting to hear what big, large organizations are doing with their SAP installations, what large, big four, big three consulting firms are doing with SAP, and then the medium-sized organizations, and then even the smaller size organizations, right? So we have a viewpoint of SAP that's very broad, probably more on the mid to lower side, say up to $1 billion, right? That's where we spend most of our time in revenue for organizations that big. And the world is changing for SAP for sure, very much so. There was very little desire to go to the cloud with SAP over the last 5 years. Big deployments, no way. You almost, we ran into problems, I'll say, when we did this before. Watch what I say there. And I'm not doing it unless I really, really, really have to. Well, guess what? COVID hit. Guess what? Work from home. Guess what? Even the customers, like the end users, are like, this is terrible. I got to have a better experience, or I'm going to go, great reshuffle or great resignation or whatever it is, right? You got to get out of these products. And so we were recently working with one of the big three, right? And they were talking about working with a Fortune 50 company, and it was they were going to go to S/4HANA Cloud, private cloud, and it was going to be like a $500 million project. So, that's a lot of money, right? But when you see the big guys willing to risk that, that tells you something, right? And even when we look at even a smaller manufacturer, right? Some folks like, I will never get on SAP again. Okay, fine. But there's a reason why it is the largest enterprise software company in the world for ERP, just pure ERP. There are instances where it makes a ton of sense to do it. And we're seeing it more and more and more, even with some of our sort of mid-sized, smaller SAP clients that we would never consider SAP for. We're definitely taking a look at that. Plus, they're getting their sales channel really defined on how to sell cloud also, which is different than how they used to sell. Right? Very, very, very different. So, hey, if I can get onto SAP, that's best of breed. It'll take me to however size I'm going to get. I'm private equity backed. We're going to go from 100 million to $1 billion. And I got to get there. And I don't want to change halfway because blah, it makes a ton of sense. So I think Rise helped with that. They lowered some pricing, which sort of helped with that. But I think the implementation partners, again, I hope you guys are listening. I'm looking forward to hearing how you are going to right-size your implementation to support a $250,000 recurring software deal every year. You can't do a $2.5 million implementation. You just can't. Right? You're not that good. I just said it. Sorry. So just keep that in mind as you're working with some of those mid-sized clients for sure. But again, I see our practice doing more with even SAP as we go forward for sure.
Right. And SAP doesn't have like a sunsetting date that's off way down in the future, right? No.
I mean, their older products do, for sure. The ECC 6, the R3, like they do have a set date where they are definitely stopping support, but there's so many customers on that product. And I do think SAP is a good company. They're going to do the right thing. They've already done some renewals and some changes. But what they're really doing now is they're like, okay, no kidding. What is it really going to take for these companies to get into the cloud? I think some leadership changes help with that, honestly, kind of mindset changes. And I think they're going to get there. I think there's going to be a nice path, but it's still evolving a little bit.
Right. Okay. Well, what about UnitFour?
UnitFour. So we just had a good lunch with sort of a thought leader at UnitFour recently, and it was great to see sort of UnitFour doesn't get a lot of limelight, I think, in the US, frankly, right? Very broad throughout the world, one of the top 5 ERP vendors. I really see them coming in around sort of services, pro serve, nonprofit, even some government work for sure. It's one of those companies that, again, you sort of never heard of, but then once you start looking at it, you're like, wow, you have who as a client? So I think in those particular industries, like you just got to look at UnitFour. Like we have an environmental non-government organization that has been a client of ours for a long time, and they were thinking, oh, we're just going to look at blah app, and it's like that makes a ton of sense. And I think you should take a look at UnitFour because of the global footprint that a lot of North American-based software vendors they have it, but it's just different. I'm sorry, but we had a prospect recently that was based in the UK, or not in the UK, I guess, but in the Netherlands, and most of their business was rest of world, right? And they had a little small piece in the US, and they came to us and said, can you help us with this? And I just said, I just don't have a specialist in your part of the world that focuses on what you do, that's very, very technical. And I don't think we can service you. Here's another firm that you should go talk to, right? I feel the same way with enterprise software, where, there are instances where, you're located more geographically, you're not headquartered necessarily in the US. And I think this is where UnitFour has sort of a leg up, where they've got that experience more internationally, and certainly have customers in North America too. So I think they're going to do really well this year. I think UnitFour is going to do really good. I'm hoping we do a deal with them, frankly, because I think they've got good people there that are, again, super committed to making things go right. That's what I care about the most, right?
That's right.
We'll get a client down to a couple vendors that are great. They're like 10 million times better than what they have. Then I am like all about the people. Which team is really committed and going all in to make our client a success? Oh, I'm so busy. I have so many clients. Well, guess what? You just lost. Like, I don't ever want to hear that. You've got to figure out how to pass your hats and grow and expand so that our clients feel like they're the best in the world, right? And I think UnitFour has that mentality there, and I love that.
Okay. Well, let's finish up with Workday. What are your thoughts on Workday?
Oh, Workday. Talk about nice people. Oh my gosh. Like their salespeople are like the nicest people of all time. Like, we did a deal recently where it was Workday versus, I'll say is another vendor. You can probably guess. And man, the Workday team won the deal, right? The apps were good. We did a ton of deep dives and functionality and really digging in on the financial side. Right, not just the HCM side, but on the financial side. And my client, who is the CIO of an international private equity-backed, super fast-growing company, was just like, I could see a pathway with either vendor, but I like these guys from Workday. They're going to help me, and I think they're going to get me through this. And I think that is something about Workday that I think is left over from when I was at PeopleSoft, even back in the day. All I remember about working at PeopleSoft was In-N-Out Burger in Pleasanton. If anybody was at PeopleSoft, you know what I'm talking about. Now we have them in Colorado. We just got one around the corner. But PeopleSoft had a very people-centric focus. You certainly see that at Workday. And I love seeing on even the financial side that they're able to bring that to their customers. Their products are strong. Adaptive's done really well. I think that's sort of an entry point now for them to go back to adaptive customers and say, hey, let's get you in the next size ERP. And then HCM, I think, is going to continue to just set the standard. I mean, so many of our, VP of HRs, the chief people resource officers, they're like, okay, I just want Workday, right? Like, I just want Workday. Okay, well, you can't, the pricing isn't quite right. Okay, fine, but I want Workday, right? I think Workday is going to continue to have that over some of the other vendors that sell HR, frankly.
Interesting.
Yeah, for sure. But the financials, like I said, are also coming of age where I think the office of the CFO is like, wow, I can use this in maybe even a different way, sort of a super general ledger that sits above maybe other subsidiary general ledgers. I'm rolling it out across the world, lots of, multi-company currency, all the consolidation capabilities. So I think it's going to continue to do well too. I think it's going to do well. I think everybody's going to do well, but if you really listen, go back on this recording, I'm leaving little clues in here on what they're really going to do well at, right? Because that's the thing is it's not like, oh, everybody's going to do great. They're going to do really well in their micro verticals or in the market size that they focus on.
That's right. Well, that's a lot of options. A lot. Well, a lot of options for businesses that are in the market for a new ERP system. I mean, it'd be different if there were just a few players, but that's a lot of competition out there.
There is. Yeah. And I think that leads into a little bit of sort of what I think there'll be some changes going forward too on that.
Yeah. So if we focus on clients, like what is the most important thing that a client or a prospect should consider when making an ERP change in 2022? What should they keep in mind?
Yeah, that is a great question. Again, I rarely prepare for these calls so that I can just be like, boom, here's the answer. I tried to prepare on this question and I really couldn't. Because here's the thing, and I was talking to Quentin about this on our team. Everybody loves Quentin. It's great. He's great. Don't hire him though. Anyway, and he's really noticing with his clients that sort of best of breed, like pretty good functionality isn't good enough, right? That our clients are expecting like micro vertical functionality so that the apps support exactly kind of how they want to run their business. And then definitely the other piece he talked about was the integration, that there's just an expectation that, marketing went out and bought this and sales bought that and the product development people bought this. That's always been that way. And then we're going to get the ERP and they have to play well together, right? That's that composite apps you hear about, I was working on integration platforms back at JD Edwards back in the day, right? Web methods, we called it XPI, I think it was. But today, like it's really true that concept of, the PMs went out and bought Monday, right? Or they're licensing Monday, or some other group is out here doing, like we were talking to a company the other day and they're throwing out all these best of breed apps. I don't know what these are. I have no idea. I've never run into them before. But you just see that the sophistication of our users is just going through the roof. Like we were talking to a great business, family owned, family run manufacturer about under 10 million in revenue. And they're listing out all these apps that they're working in. And it's like, holy moly, like you got to run your business still. How are you going to do that with all these apps? But it's like, it's just expected that all of these products work together. There's cost to that, right? But the costs are coming down for integration. So it's real that a smaller company can bring all these apps together. So keep an eye out on that for sure. And I know we've been going for a while, so thanks to everybody for sticking with us here. I do think that, so feature functionality, integrations, definitely this composite app concept for sure. Maybe one more point I'll say is, it's more about your implementation resources than the software. Those are basics. We've been talking about that all along, but it's really, really important this year because everybody's busy. Everybody. Even some of our key vendors that we've been working with for years and years, they're so busy that they're like, oh, right. It's like, okay, this is so there's going to be new folks coming in. I think that demand will sort of maybe kind of taper off a little bit so people will catch up. But just watch out for that. Like, again, a company we were talking to recently, they're like, oh, yeah, this app makes a lot of sense for us. But when they gave us the statement of work, I'm like, no, you don't even know my business. They actually do, but they just like zoop, shot out the SOW without thinking about it. Take the time to do that. So that's, the technology platform, the feature functionality, and the implementation partner. Really, of the apps that we talked about, they're all viable. They're all great. They're all doing really good in the market. But those are going to be the three things that you need to differentiate on, right? Feature functionality, technology platform, and then the people doing your product. So your implementation. So those are three things I would leave with everybody. Bang, bang, bang.
That's right. And we've done these calls for quite a few years now. Your implementation team is very important, right? To get you to your goal and to the end zone, right?
Right.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. And I would even say too on that if maybe I could even go even further out to 2025, 2030, I would say, Juliet, that, and this is something I have really been putting my mind around, there's this concept of the metaverse, right? Mm-hmm. Where, sort of going into digital, lots of digital things happening. I'm like, okay, well, that's every client I have, especially with work from home, especially with this acceptance of, hey, I don't have to be in the office and whatever else. So now we're relying on systems for communication and all that. That's but right. Commerce, Like, it's just, we're all wired digitally, electronically to push our lives into the electronic world. My dad isn't. But he works for a nonprofit in San Francisco and does all this research on different markets and how vets and homeless people can get help. And then he documents all that stuff and puts it into Salesforce, right? So even my dad is using Salesforce. I'm like, holy moly, this is because my dad's great. I love that guy to death. He's a great man, but not the most technology savvy, but now he is, right? So we're there, right?
That's right.
And I do think, even as I think about the list of vendors that we went through, do we need that much variation? Are we making things too confusing for clients? Are business process automation solutions do they need to be so unique? Does that really bring a lot? Is it better to sort of pool some capital together and use it for other purposes? It's interesting because the answer is yes. We saw that with data centers, where why in the world should every client have their own data center, whether it's in a closet or over at, private cloud or whatever? Hey, we'll just do it, right? And that's taking more responsibility. It goes back to that point. But, if you think about some of these vendors that are, R&D and their marketing and selling and their accounting and everything, and it's all duplicate expenses. Those are people, by the way, we got to remember that. But if we can bring some collaborations together, we can do more as an industry together. Like, holy moly, imagine what we could do.
That's right.
Like, that's awesome. Right. Like, even Erica, my wife, our principal of operations, basically your boss, my boss too. She was talking about doing something with one of our providers the other day, one of our benefits providers, and how you upload a spreadsheet. Whoop, like, it wasn't just like a normal upload. It was like, there was intelligence and there was robotic process automation built between taking this data in this unstructured format relatively and putting it into a very structured format that the system could take and roll with. That's happening today all over. I mean, who knows what happens with our Zoom calls and everything else, and who scans it looking for things. Like, I can add a mustache right now to my face and it looks like literally wearing a mustache. Weird. How does it know my face, right?
That's right.
Weird. And, you look at Oracle buying Cerner that's one of the top, Cerner, one of the top medical, patient care reporting systems, medical record systems.
Right.
What are you going to do with that? Right. And what is already being done? So it could go in a really weird place for sure. Or we could all be proactive about this and nail it for clients and build platforms that, really bring the automation. All of my competitors are talking about the same things, with the way that the world has changed and process stuff and, digitization and digital transformation, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
But no, like, for real, there's this lack of resources. Although, where did they all go? They're all still out there. And then there's more people coming out of colleges. I know, because my kids are going in, somebody's going out. There's a lot of great people out there that I think going into this decade, the folks, the ERP vendors are going to win. They're going to win on innovation, not on just scalability and economies of scale with going to the cloud, or marketing, or, because of their long-term position in the marketplace. And everybody just goes with blah, because that's what you go with if you're a, global manufacturer. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think this is the year this is the decade where we're going to see innovation at a whole new level that's going to be very exciting. So that's what I love about our industry. It's changing. And, maybe it's a plea to the vendors out there to keep focused on that kind of things, not just your feature functionality today, or, you got to maintain your cloud. You got to keep that infrastructure super, super secure. Now, what do you do? Because you're making a lot of money right now.
That's right.
Money. All of those vendors we went through are doing very, very well financially. So what are you going to do with that cash? Let's make the world a better place.
That's right.
And I think we're going to do it.
Yep. Well, Shawn, I think we're at the end of our time. As always, thank you for sharing your expertise and your knowledge and your predictions for 2022. So, thank you.
ERP Advisors Group is one of the country's top independent enterprise software consulting firms, advising mid to large-sized businesses on selecting and implementing business applications, including ERP, CRM, HCM, business intelligence, and other enterprise applications, which equate to millions of dollars in software deals each year across many industries. This has been the ERP Advisor.